with Yorkshire because, as I'm sure you all know, Tuesday was Yorkshire Day. So when we were trying to think about topics for this month, we thought that was appropriate. So all our authors today write in some way, in some small or large part, about Yorkshire. What I'm going to do today is to ask them to introduce themselves to you, to read a little bit from their book, and then we'll have a discussion about how they've written the book and what drives them to write the books that they do write. And I hope that at the end you have lots of questions for them too. So first of all, I'm going to introduce Hazel.
I knew it was going to be me. Did you notice the way she looks?
Yes. So if you'd like to introduce yourself, Hazel, and just read us a short bit from your book.
I will. I'm Hazel Goss. I live in Beverages, so not very far from here. The book I'm going to read to you is called The Pathway Back. It's one of 3. All of them are set in and around Harrogate. July 2016. Jason dragged himself up the stairs, exhausted but unwilling to attempt sleep, which constantly eluded him. He went lethargically through the undressing, teeth cleaning, pill popping routine, and then slipped between the sheets. They were cool, but soon he warmed, snuggled and shut his eyes. Since Catherine's death, he had become an insomniac. The room was too quiet, the bed too big and empty, but tonight he drifted away quickly and began to dream. Or was it a nightmare? The alleyway was dark and smelled of urine. Litter squelched underfoot, and a woman's scream set him trembling with fear. A man shouted something, and as Jason turned to see what had happened, the glimmer of a streetlight suddenly disappeared, blotted out by a figure running towards him. Pounding closer, the footsteps echoed, and Jason's pulse raced as he pressed himself up against the damp wall. Something wet flapped against his face. He stood paralysed until the man left, and the dull glow from the light was revealed. Sighing with relief, he ventured after the man. Jason's feet made no sound as he ran to the end of the alleyway. He looked cautiously both ways and saw the man running downhill towards the royal baths, his coattails bobbing and his white scarf streaming out behind him. Jason awoke, instantly alert. He had been asleep barely an hour. His heart seemed to be beating abnormally fast, and the details of his dream were vivid. Throwing back the duvet, he went to the bathroom and put the light on. He put the light on above the shaving mirror to find his sleeping pills in the cabinet. The sight of his reflected face was shocking. It was spattered with blood. Peering closer, looking for a wound, he realised he had no pain and no cut. It was not his blood. He checked the rest of his body and saw that his feet were filthy. No wonder I made no noise running down the alley. I had bare feet, he thought. He sat down quickly on the toilet seat, feeling unsteady. His heart was racing with the onset of an anxiety attack, and he fought to calm himself. He recognised the fear and knew how to combat the rising feeling of panic and then nausea, which gradually abated. He stripped off his nightclothes, had a shower, and then, clad in his dressing gown, he returned to the bedroom. The pillowcase was smeared with blood, and he felt a wave of shock threatening his stomach again. He yanked off the offending bedding and went back to the bathroom to deposit them in the washing bin, along with his nightclothes. He would have to soak those in cold water tomorrow. How he longed to talk to Catherine. She had been a good listener, reassuring, his sensible, full of ideas and bursting with life. He missed her so much he ached, but now he pushed away the threat of maudling thoughts that inevitably led to tears. It had been 6 months, and he had to try to make a life without her. The dream of the alley came back into his mind. I witnessed a crime, but how did I see it? Did I walk in my sleep? Did I unlock the door? I shouldn't wash the blood out. It's evidence of a crime. Perhaps forensics would want them to do some tests. I don't remember seeing a weapon. And who and where was the victim? went downstairs and tried the front door, back and patio doors, but they were all locked. It then occurred to him that filthy feet would leave marks on the wooden floor, so he crawled in the most likely areas. But they were all clean. No footprints. All the doors locked. So how did it happen? I think I'll stop there.
Thank you, Hazel. Very intriguing. Yes, right, well, can I pass on to you, Emily?
You can. I'm Emily Trisk, and this is my first novel. It was published in March on my birthday, and in theory it's women's psychological suspense, but I've had feedback from lots of men that have really enjoyed it. So maybe it's just psychological suspense. I'll read you the blurb off the back.
I'll just put it on.
That's it. I'll read you the blurb. Widow Kate McConnell, mother of 16-year-old Lizzie, finally wakes up to the fact that her life has been made unbearable by her abusive partner. Kate feels unable to trust anyone. Meanwhile, just as she's slowly beginning to make tentative plans, Lizzie is badly injured. Her abuser ensures that she discovers the news in a cruel manner, leaving her to question her sanity. Now we're enjoying.
Sorry about that. It's very difficult if people can't hear what you're reading.
Yeah. Now, I need to give you a little bit of background. It's only page 11, but an awful lot has happened already. Daughter Lizzie is on her way home from school. She's staying with her friend and her friend's family. Her mum is away. So she's walking back from the school bus. Rather than take the shortcut, she decides that she's going to walk past her own home. On the way past, she suddenly notices a light going on in her mum's study. There's no one in, there's no car there, but someone's there. So Lizzie being Lizzie, instead of getting her key and going in, because of course she doesn't know who it is, she decides to do what she's done before and climb up on top of the porch. Placing her bag down at the bottom of the steps, she quickly checked her phone and balanced it on top of the fastened bag. Stepping back slightly, she tried to recall some of the hand and footholds. A few years had passed, but the flowering climbers were still there, now much sturdier and maybe minus the flowers, although one or two damp, bedraggled blooms hung on stubbornly. The downpipe had been replaced with expensive cast iron. Brackets firmly attached. Last time she did this, it was a bright summer's day. Today she was going to have to do it mainly by feel. Once she'd reached the roof of the porch, things would be plain sailing. A slight incline of just a few tiles was topped by a levelled area, surrounded by a short, thankfully spiteless fence. For the first time in 2 months, Lizzie was oddly thankful of her school's strict uniform policy of flat, sensible shoes. Her year group complained, of course. They were taking their GCSEs this year. Couldn't they be allowed just a little bit of discretion when it came to footwear? The answer, of course, was a clear no. Lizzie stepped onto the handily placed sturdy planter, feeling the white trellis and thicker stems of the wisteria beneath her fingers. It was difficult now to work out which was supporting which. The wood felt damp and slightly slippery, but lifting her knee and jamming her toe into a useful spot, she started her ascent. The trick was to avoid the climbing rows, beautiful but lethal. Wishing she'd put on her gloves, she grasped the downpipe while working out her next move. Progressing steadily, she soon reached the porch roof, thankful that the stems continued on their upward journey. Reaching the flat area of tiles, she allowed herself to relax for a moment, blowing short puffs of breath onto each finger in turn. Now it should be easy. She positioned her foot on the useful row of stone extending out slightly along the full width of the property and reached for the gritty slab of the windowsill. A shadow passed the window, causing her to bend her knees slightly and drop against the hard stone. Pausing briefly, she extended her legs and pulled herself up, just sufficiently to peer through the glass. What was he doing in there? She almost knocked on the window, stopping herself as she realised quite where she was. He moved aside slightly, and Lizzie could see the dark wooden box, lid still firmly closed. She watched him slam his palms down on the surface of the desk and bow his head. Papers lay scattered across the carpet. He began to pull out drawers, rifling through the contents and throwing down cards and notebooks to join the bits of paper at his feet. Files were torn open, with sheets mainly thrust back to where they came, just the odd one being set aside. He moved to the bookcase, selecting volumes seemingly methodically and flipping through the pages, occasionally shaking the odd one almost from its bindings. Struggling to pull out a silver box wedged close to a bookend on a high shelf, he stopped, studying its surface, trying again this time successfully, and held it close to his eyes. Suddenly he swept from the room without switching off the light, the door ajar. Lizzie waited, pressing her nose against the window and trying to study the items on the desk. The box was familiar, but everything else was just too far away to see clearly. She got ready to dip down again. Her arms were beginning to shake, her fingers numbing in the cold breeze. God, she muttered, wondering what on earth had possessed her to do something as stupid as this at the age of 16. The familiar, cheerful ringtone of her mobile broke the silence. "No, not now," she hissed. The tune stopped briefly and then began again. She needed to get down, and quickly. Working her way carefully to the edge of the roof, she lowered her foot, finding it would not go in the direction she wanted it to. The phone rang out again. She felt her fingers slipping as she tried to grasp the climber, its sharp thorns slicing deeply into her fingers as she fell.
Thank you. Julia.
Thank you, Kate. I can't tell whether this is picking up. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Thank you. My name is Julia Usman, and I live in Swaledale. I would primarily call myself a poet, and this is my first foray into writing a book, which began with the idea of writing about my childhood, brought up on a group of small mixed farms in the North Riding of Yorkshire, and a way of life that I felt was dying away, and I wanted to leave something behind for my children and grandchildren. And so a little country was born. I'm going to read a little bit, I've got fingers everywhere, a little bit from the foreword, and then a little anecdote and the last few lines of the book. I inhabit the law I have inherited. The daughter of farming parents, I am propagated by ancestors from the soils of northern England. My Yorkshire upbringing was nurtured in a tight-knit rural community of small farms, rooted in Methodism and centuries of customs. Steady lives, accepting, conservative, cyclical. As the time and distance from the community in which I was brought up increases, the more these early rural influences accompany me on my journey through life. down tracks that bring into focus the threads that stitch my identity, none more so than the people and experiences that walk alongside me from childhood. In these vanishing clusters of small mixed farms, there is a story to carry into the future, to tell before a way of life completely disappears from living memory. This is a story of landscape and community, a way of life descended from Anglo-Saxon and Viking farmers. It is a story that could belong to anyone who has lived their early years growing up on a modest dairy farm in the 1960s and 70s. It is about static lives and about movement, about change, and about understanding how the past walks through us, mapping our present and future. So I live near Reeth, and I moved there about 10 years ago, having lived near Richmond, which is only 10 miles east of Reeth, for most of my life. In Reeth, off-comers are tolerated, but not without first answering questions about their origins. Soon after arriving, an older resident corners me. "Are they local, lass?" "Yes, I am. I was brought up on a farm 5 miles from Richmond." "Nay, there's not local if there's from Richmond." "Well, my great-grandmother was an Alderson by birth." "You're not kidding, by heck." His ruddy face reflects for a moment or two, then he gives a nod in silent approval, for he knows as well as I that in this part of the world, family names hold clout. When I next visit the post office, another elder of the village flashes a beaming smile at me, addressing the entire queue waiting to be served. "This lady's one of us," he knows. "Aye, she's an Alderson." The name generates ripples of approval across the gathered. I am kin, and as such, I have earned my place on their map. The old ways of farming may have receded into the past, but the land will outlive today's custodians, however we farm, whatever we leave behind. It is tempting to overlook or idolise the lives of those who once worked the land. For most, life was lived hand to mouth, and we are the poorer if we forget the people that once toiled on small farms. We are their benefactors, and so the cycle must continue. Future beneficiaries deserve nothing less. If we touch anywhere after we die, then surely our souls return to the landscape we haunt when we are alive. Thank you.
Yes, it's a strange thing to be accepted or not accepted in an area, isn't it? Paul, would you like to read, please?
I'm Paul Smith, but I write under all kinds of different names. I write under Joseph Murphy James for my fantasy children's stuff, and I also write under Eileen Rogers, my brother's name, for my Yorkshire story about a fictitious village in Yorkshire called Hazel. And it's based upon two villages in Yorkshire, but I'm not going to tell you what they are. You might be able to recognise it if you need a quick. The story of Hazel started at a writers' group in Harrogate, and I wrote something for the Christmas, and then I wrote another piece in the middle of the summer. And quite a few people said to me, "What to make that into a novel?" So I did. I made it into a trilogy. It starts with the 4 seasons of Hazel, presumably it's through the whole year in Hazel. And then it's Hazel and Ghost Trail, I won't tell you what that's about. And then it's Farewell to Hazel, which is the last in the series. What I'm going to do is I'm going to read you the piece that started it, which is the short story that I actually wrote for a writer's circle in Harrogate. It's called At the Allotment, and it really introduces some of the characters from Hazel. At the Allotment. Do you know what that Dora said? Bert glanced up, paw in hand, continuing with his reading as he said, "No, you'd best tell me, Harold, that I was off gallivanting when there's work to be done around the house. Gallivanting, I tell you." "There's always work to do around the house," said Walter, carrying 3 cups of tea on the tray, plus a treat for his partners on the allotment. Harold was quick to spot the plate. "Here, those what I think they are." He didn't wait for a reply and took the proffered cups, handing one to Bert. "Your Caribbean pasties are the best, nice and spicy. Dora likes to cook plain, can't abide anything pungent." "Here, let's have your pungent," said Walter, his smile broad as he held out the tray towards Harold, who grabbed a chili-laced pastry with gusto. Walter glanced at Bert and the exchange agreed as Bert helped himself from the plate. "What's wrong with Dora this morning, anyway?" "She normally likes you out from under her feet, Harold," said Bert, chuckling. "I know my Elsie does, often shoves me out the door." "It's that blasted sister of hers, the one from Harrogate. Right stuck up she is. She's paying us a visit." "Oh, good time to be out of the way, I'd say, Harold." Walter shrugged. He'd never married, lived on his own, a blithe arrangement as far as he was concerned. "Oh, she's not coming today. And it's worse." Bert had stopped hoeing and was supping his tea, having finished the pasty. With the current mood, he could see that he wasn't going to achieve much until Harold had aired his dreams. "What's worse? She's coming in 2 weeks and staying for a fortnight. 2 weeks, I tell you. It'll be purgatory. I hope it doesn't rain or they'll be moping around the house and her nose will be in the air all the time saying, 'You still haven't a dishwasher, I see.' Seems like that." Walter gave a resigned sigh as he said, "So what's got into Dora today?" "She wants to put her sister up in our room. We'll have the spare, which is too bulky for the princess." "You didn't tell her that, did you?" said Bert, smiling. "Might have done. I'm surprised you're not in the spare room already, Harold." "Oh, we are." "I think I'm getting this," said Walter, well used to Harold's circumnavigation. "Dora wants your bedroom spick and span, and that means decorating them. Am I right?" "Oh, that's right. Plus new curtains and a spanking brand new furniture, costing us a fortune. I put a lick of paint on it yesterday. Dora thinks it needs another." "But you're not sure," said Bert, interrupting, then finishing his tea, placing the empty cup on the tray, which was nestled in the grass. "Oh, I am sure, Bert. It doesn't need another." Harold's countenance took on a stubborn look. Walter and Bert both knew it couldn't last. Dora always had the last word, but Harold wanted this time to be different. It seemed that countless years of marriage had taught him nothing. "I know that," said Walter. "It'll end in tears, you mark my words." "I haven't a clue what you're talking about," said Harold, as Bert and Walter exchanged furtive glances. Well, the weather turned atrocious for a couple of days, thunderstorms and torrents of rain. It meant that the 3 amigos avoided the allotment, and it was Friday before they gathered in their shed for a brew. The rain was light and ground saturated, so there was little to do except gossip. Bert and Walter arrived first, and the kettle had boiled as Harold, faced like the storms that had raged for the last few days, trundled through the door. "You look like you've met yourself coming back. What's up, Harold?" said Walter. "Dora," said Bert. "Of course it is. You know what she's gone and done?" "Not if you don't tell her," said Walter. "She's got a man in. As if we can afford to get a man in." "For the painting, I suppose," said Bert, chuckling. "That's right. What else did you think?" "Oh, nothing," said Bert, as Walter stifled a chuckle. "It's not funny. It cost us a few hundred. It's like she thinks I can't do a good job. Has to get someone else. I ask you." "It's your own fault, Harold," said Walter. Harold stared at Walter and then at Bert, who nodded before Harold said, "Is that what you think, Bert?" "You know Dora better than most, Harold. Not the woman to be trifling with. If she wants something done, it'll get done, by hook or by crook." How about thinking on the bright side, said Walter. At least you don't have to do the painting now. I had a mate whose wife went off with a painter once. Told her he was handy with a brush. Bert laughed as Harold gave an indignant grunt and said, "You best brew that tea and make it strong."
Thank you, Paul. That's Yorkshire. Well, you've heard 4 very different excerpts from 4 very different books, but I just wonder whether there's anything in common in the way that you all write your books. Do you plan them from beginning to end, or do you wait and see where the book takes you?
I am not a planner.
You're not?
I am not a planner at all. I get a ghost of an idea and I start. And the book happens. There is a proper word for that, apparently. It's called being a pantser. P-A-N-T-S-E-R. It means writing from the seat of your pants. And I'm most definitely one of those. I didn't know I was, but I discovered it as I started to write a book. I just didn't want to do it chapter by chapter by chapter. So.
I'm a real mixture. I do switch gears very much. I do plan, but then usually something happens, and certainly with Fractured Lives, I had a character who came in on page 60 simply to deliver a pile of newspapers to his mother's neighbour, and he never went away. He stayed for the rest of the novel. I decided I liked it and just ran with it. So yes, a real mix.
Different for you, Julia, because yours is a story you know.
I said I was a poet and I started. I ended up in Dubai, a different story. And when I was in Dubai, I began to think about
home much more. And I had a lot of time on my hands because my husband was working over there. And I started writing poems about home more and more. And then with the birth of grandchildren particularly and more, I decided that this was something that I wanted to pass on to them, and I converted the poems into prose, and I've kept some of the poems, but I've used italics and converted it more into poetic prose, but that was the trigger for me to start to write. And so after that I thought about, well, I'm going to write about being brought up in the Dales around these poems, but I didn't want to start at the beginning and say, well, I was born here and I did this and I did that. So it is covering about 50 years, but very much backwards and forwards, not in a linear manner. So I'm a pantser.
I guess I have a need to write. I like writing. I find it very therapeutic, cathartic even. And I like characters. It's the character.
Make the story, my stories. And I let the characters speak for themselves, more or less. When you start with a character, it starts to get the life. They start to get the life of their own. And I let the characters go where they are. I do have a spark of an idea, but I'm a pants. I let the story come. And sometimes the characters take you to places that you really didn't expect them to go.
And so do you write every day, Paul?
I used to write every day. I used to get up at 6:30 and write about an hour every day. I can't honestly say I do that now. Life gets in the way sometimes, but I feel deprived if I haven't. So what I tend to do is I write a book and then put it down for 6 months and then pick it up again and then see what I like and what I don't, and then I rewrite it. And and then I edit, and if you're not careful, you can never stop.
Yeah. Do you write every day, Julia?
I try to write every day. In fact, at the moment, I'm very good at being disciplined and writing. I set myself at least an hour every day, but it is so difficult when life gets in the way. And then sometimes you just can't. Well, I find I lose the will and the impetus to do it, and sometimes that's really good because then you leave something alone and you return to it, don't you? It's the same as writing poetry. You know, you can't polish something off and then think, oh, job done. It's just, this took 6 years, but it did go through a few different versions, and as Paul said, yeah, I could still be sat at home editing it now if I suddenly just thought, right, that is it, leave it alone.
I would like to be able to write every day, but I don't and I can't. I live with a long-term health condition, so some days are just wiped out completely. But what I do try and do is to set myself a goal each week of how many thousand words I want to have written by the end of that week. Don't beat myself up if I don't manage it, but I try and have that goal. But sometimes if I'm doing something completely different, like if I'm out and about instead of writing, I'm people watching. I'm the world's worst people watcher. I just can't help it. So it's good. That's good for my writing. Although being hearing impaired, it's getting a little bit frustrating now. I can't subtly people watch. I have to scare you.
I definitely don't write every day, but if it goes a couple of days, I start getting withdrawal symptoms and think, I need to get back, I need to go and write. And I know that, like Paul, there is something in me that says, I need to do this. It's not a confessional. I don't write, anything that's going to make me feel better. It's just that I get into the book that I'm writing, and it's not me anymore. I'm now in my book, so I'm in a different society. I'm in a different group. I'm just away. And when you're away like that, it's a little bit like watching something excellent on television. For a brief while, you don't think of anything else. And it's the same when you're writing.
Do you find it difficult? Are there things that you find difficult to write about?
Yes, I avoid anything horrific. I mean, you might not think so, having heard the beginning of my story, but it isn't horrific. Honestly, it isn't. It's actually time travel. That's how he got into the alley. But he didn't understand about time travel or how he did that. Later he finds out. So no, I can't write horror. I can't write vicious, nasty things. Because I can't watch those on television, it's not part of me, and so I just can't do it. So there's my hang-up, if you like.
And how about you? Do you have things that...
With me, nothing's ruled out.
Right.
But I do have to say with this novel, the core is coercive control, and I'm a survivor of domestic abuse. And I made the decision in this not to include any violence at all. It's simply control.
I'm trying now to write a non-fiction book, and in fact, the book has kind of taken over me. And I was listening to Maggie O'Farrell, and I was just thinking then, and she's incredibly successful author, but she said if she gets 2 hours quality time of writing a day, the rest is thinking, and I think I agree with that, because when I'm dog walking I'm always thinking. But I actually, in answer to the question, I actually found myself writing something really violent in this fiction book quite early on in the story, and it really took me by surprise. It was something completely different to anything I've ever written before, and I actually quite enjoyed it.
I mean, I guess I like imaginative stuff, and I don't like horror. I don't like graphically painful stuff. So I don't mind any of that. But if the plot calls for it, then you have to write it. And it's like, I don't like sex scenes either. If they are, they're subtle. But if the plot calls for it, then you have to do it. I've written a time slip, one where two young men, 18, 19-year-old men, slip through a river in time and end up in occupied France. And we're talking about wartime and the atrocities that the Germans did, and they actually happen in the same way as they are in Ukraine at the moment. So you have to write about that, and I did. And like you, I found it quite surprising that I could, but I did. And my wife, when she read it, she said it didn't seem like you, it didn't seem like me. And so yes, there's certain things I don't like writing, but I still do write.
Yeah. I find that quite interesting, really, because I think it's quite difficult. And yet, as you say, sometimes you're taken away by it, aren't you? And it just has to be written as it has to be written. Yeah. So your characters, are your characters drawn from life, or are they a mishmash of people, if you like? How do you pull your characters?
The people you meet. Some of them are people on the bus that you just have to overhear. Particularly the Hazel Goss series. I mean, I'm surrounded by Yorkshire people. And it's fantastic, absolutely fantastic. It's an absolutely rich source of everything here. You sit on a bus and go to Whitby somewhere, and you listen to people on that bus. It's fantastic, absolutely fantastic. And they don't know that I'm listening, and they don't know that I'm listening. But I think if you were to read the Hazel Goss, you'd recognise some of the characters in there, because they're strong Yorkshire characters. So yes.
Well, I'm going to say that coming from a farming community, I've got an abundance of personalities and characters that I can draw on. I did change the names on the advice of Ian, who published the book, because although a lot of them have sadly passed on, the relatives might recognise themselves, and so I kept my parents' names and didn't mention them. Well, I referred to my mother and father and my siblings, but after that I changed the names of the people just to protect them. But and I drew on those idiosyncrasies about character that, looking back, you can pick out. Perhaps as a child you didn't see it so much.
I pick up characters all over the place during my people watching, and I pick up snippets of conversation which, when nobody's looking, go down in a notebook. But having said that, going back to planning, in my writing generally I create characters. I'm writing my second novel at the moment, and I have a big chart, and I have a book as well, and I have to ensure that people's characters are very different and that people behave in the way that you would expect them to. Apart from in this second novel, I have a group of characters who can actually behave in any way they wish to, which is wonderful. My background's in psychology as well, so I am particularly interested in people, behaviour, etc.
They say that you write about what you know, and I think that's where characters come from. People you know, people you see, people even that you don't know, but you kind of imagine what they might be like. Obviously, you've got characters who are old, young. I find it hard to write about teenagers but now I've got a grandson of 16, it's getting easier. I know now that their monosyllabic can say almost nothing. So that's quite good, I could do that. But in other ways, I think these people just come into your head, you can see them, and you know exactly what they're going to do.
So, yes, so would you then say that you're always inventing characters in your head? Are you always inventing people? When you see people outside, are you inventing their lives for them?
Well, not always, but there are moments. You might just be idly sitting on a bus or a train and you're looking at somebody across the way and then you start to wonder about their lives, and before you know it, you've written a story in your own head all about that person.
Yeah.
Oh, it sounds familiar.
Yes, it does, yes.
So, shall I pass it on,
Yes.
see if anybody else feels the same?
Yes.
Yes, I spent most of my life
Doing that, yes.
Yes, it is simply wonderful being able to create people. Yes, and for some reason something popped into my head, a snippet of conversation I picked up once that I've not used that and now I won't be able to. And it was a lady talking to her friend, and she said, my son has Down syndrome. Do you remember? And the friend said, yes, you've got another son, haven't you? Is he disabled? And the woman said, no, but he wears glasses.
Talking about characters, I made a conscious effort in this book to try and think as I thought as a child. And I found it quite difficult having the experience of an adult to go back to thinking about a situation or about a person as you would as a child. But in fact, when I got into it, it was good fun, really good fun.
Yes, because we see people so differently, don't we now? I mean, it's even like seeing somewhere and the size of something. As a child, something seems so much bigger than it does when you're grown up, and people seem so much more larger than life, I guess, than when you're grown up.
I mean, most of my books are based upon characters, so the character comes first. And if I look at the two ladies in the paper, they're called Dolly and Betsy, good names. And Dolly is based upon somebody I know from the past. She's a big lady, but always immaculately dressed, and her hair always coloured. And then Betsy is based upon somebody else that I know. A number of people I know, really, and she's sort of gets her clothes from the charity shops. Her hair decides to go where it wants to go, and she never wears makeup. And there's, they're like chalk and cheese, but they're really good friends. And it's that relationship that I like. So, so when you meet people in life, you use the characteristics that suit to match the characters that you want. But there are, in some, like in the Question of Resistance, which is the time slip into occupied France, there are lots of people in there who don't are not represented by anybody you've ever met in life, particularly German soldiers. And those have to come out of your imagination, and maybe out of something that you've seen on a film, or maybe on something else that you've read. So I think one of the things about writing is it forces you to read too. In order to be a reasonable writer, I think you have to read a lot as well. And it doesn't have to be just novels, but you have to read a lot. And you get quite a lot of characters out of reading. And the other thing about writing is you're never satisfied with whatever you've written, you're never satisfied with it.
No, that's true. Well, we were talking before we started the interview, we were talking a little bit about marketing and selling yourself. Do you think that that's one of the more difficult things to do? Do you feel that you shrink when you then have to sell yourself?
it's soul destroying. I want to write. You know, that's what I want to do. I want to sit and write, and that's a very solitary experience. It's when you see somebody else reading your book, it's also terrifying because every writer I know has got really shallow ego, and you're always concerned about what other people think about the book. And actually, in reality, there are as many different kinds of readers as there are different kinds of writers. And there will be somebody who dislikes your book, whether it's good or not, and then there's somebody who won't. And there are some really good writers, and when you read their stuff, you recognise the beauty in their work. But I've recently reread something I haven't read since I was in my teens, which was Lord of the Rings. It's got cult status and it's been made into a big film franchise. But actually, the writing looks really dated now, and yet of its time, it was spectacular cult fiction. And I'm sure some of the stuff that is written today that is classified as groundbreaking will be felt much the same in a few years' time. So I think write what you know, but write in the way that you want to write. There are as many readers as there are reader types as there are writers types out there.
I'm more than happy to be at home in my little room and not come out of it and not go on social media and just write. I do think that if you are able to promote yourself, then that's an absolute it's a great quality, but I don't have it. I love writing. I write what I want to write. When I write, I don't think, oh well, what about this reader and that reader? Obviously you do it the way you write, but I'm not thinking of a particular audience. I think I'm just writing something that's true to myself, and then if other people want to read it, that's a bonus.
I'm absolutely hopeless. I mean, my entire career has been working with children and then with adults, enabling them to overcome major obstacles. I'm not a marketer, I can't do that. I found it really difficult. I did manage to get myself on the radio, which was through a guy from the radio picking up a piece about me in the local paper. That was, the piece in the paper was so bad it was unbelievable. Everything was wrong, but thankfully he picked me up. But yeah, it's really, really hard.
I totally agree. I too went on the radio, thanks to Jackie, who's sitting over there, who's our teacher and mentor that we both know. And Jackie pushed and bullied and organised until I actually did it. They told me I did it very well, but when it comes to social media, I'm useless. I have a website which I fail to update or promote in any way. Here it is. See, I nearly forgot. HazelGossAuthor.com. And on there are stories and poems as well as information about the books. But I forget to do it. I'm not interested in doing it. I tried to get my husband to sort of be my sort of social person and put it all onto Twitter and I don't know what else. But as far as we've ever got between us, it's Facebook, and that's it. I'm really bad at it.
Thank you. I wonder if anybody in the audience has got questions they'd like to ask.
I'm just wondering about the lady who said she was a survivor of domestic violence. Your decision not to include violence in your own fiction, is that from the perspective of not having to relive that yourself as an individual, or is that a way of keeping violence out of the world for other people? What's your rationale for that, please?
Not really. I just thought it was a bit of a lazy way out. I just wanted to try to just see if it could have impact without the violence. And can I just say that I forgot to mention my website too. Trisk.com.
Good. Anyone else? Anyone else got a burning question? Well, I hope you've enjoyed this afternoon. You really have heard a variety of authors writing different books, writing about different things. So I hope you've picked up lots of tips from them about their books and their writing. We have books here on sale if you'd like to have a look. And thank you very much, all four of you. That's been excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you.